Hi there, my name is Kirsten Brightman. I am a student from Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, and thank you for coming to watch this short video about my research. The study today is called Pilot Situation Awareness and Risk of Critical Incidents Using a Novel Online Screening Tool. And this research comes from my undergraduate thesis and was done under the supervision of Dr. Chris Herdman and Dr. Kathleen Van Bentham. So our research question today is basically, can measures of pilot situation awareness gathered from an online computer-based screening tool for aviators be used to predict whether pilots were likely to have experienced critical incidents while acting as pilot in command? And that is a big mouthful, but basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect simulated flight performance to real-world flight occurrences. So we're trying to take pilots' measures of situation awareness from our online screening tool and connect it to incidents that have happened to them during real flight. So what you're seeing on the left here, this image is our conceptual model that we based our research around. And we use structural equation modeling as our main statistical method, and it's really great for this situation because it allows the estimating of multiple different relationships in a single analysis. So as you can see here, we have each level of situation awareness represented, and I'm going to talk about how we created these variables later, and I'll talk about how we created our critical incident risk score as well. But this is just so you kind of have an idea of what we're working with. And our main hypotheses were that increased age would have a negative influence on an individual's situation awareness. So we would expect to see negative relationships between age and all of these situation awareness variables. And then we also predicted that increased certification level would have a positive influence on situation awareness. So as a pilot's certification level increased, their scores on our situation awareness variables would also increase. And then lastly, we hypothesized that improved performance on our situation awareness variables would mean decreased risk scores. So we want to see a negative relationship here because as these values go up, as you score better on our situation awareness variables, we expect you to have lower risk scores. And since in this study we're asking about things that have happened to pilots previously while they've been in normal flight, it was really important to include the total hours as a control variable. So this is just our participant characteristics table. Feel free to pause and have a look at this if you're interested. We had a total of 65 pilots complete our study. And a big variety of ages, hours flown, years licensed, and a good variety of certification levels as well. So this was a new remote format for us, and this was different than typical simulated flight studies because participants completed our study online using a personal device. So what they did is they watched 5 short videos from the view of a Cessna 172 Skyhawk, and that's what you're seeing on the right here. Those are screenshots from our flight environment, and obviously this is a bit different because pilots did not manipulate the environment. They just watched the videos and pretended that they were piloting command. So these questions are from the study, and this is a larger project, so there's a lot of questions that we asked pilots, and this is just kind of a subsection of those. And these questions are how we generated those variables that you saw in the conceptual model. So we asked pilots questions that related to all 3 levels of situation awareness, some to do with reporting on their own personal instruments, and others that had to do with surrounding aircraft. So feel free to pause this and have a look as well about the questions that we asked. So our main outcome variable that you saw previously has to do with things that have happened to pilots while acting as pilot in command during regular flight. So before they started the study, they completed a questionnaire where basically we provided them this list of critical incidents, and they selected all of those that they had experienced while acting as pilot in command. And this is different than other studies where the critical incident data might come from how pilots actually performed in the simulation or from a governing body. So once we had this data, our challenge, I'm just going to move myself up, sorry about that. Our challenge was to take their responses to these questions and generate a risk score. So, and generate a one variable for risk. So what we did here is we graded all of the incidents from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most dangerous. And we did that so that it was a more comprehensive measure of a pilot's risk rather than just the total number of incidents they've experienced. And I'm very happy to talk about the grading criteria and my justification for the grades that we assigned. We did it based on safety reports as well as expert advice, but with the short time frame here, I'm not going to get into it super in depth, but if you are curious, please feel free to reach out or ask. So here's our hypothesis testing results. This is going to look similar to the image you previously saw. I've removed the insignificant results from this image just for clarity purposes. So all those connections that you see were significant. And excitingly, age had a significant influence on all of our levels of situation awareness in the predicted direction. So basically, as age increased, scores on these situation awareness measures suffered. So that was exciting for us, as it was as predicted. And then for certification level, we had 2 significant results in the predicted direction, where as certification level increased, so did performance on these situation awareness measures. And then at the bottom half, these connections that you can see here, basically we had 3 significant relationships, and 2 of which were in the predicted direction. So this relationship here between intention others, which was to do with the intention of other aircrafts that was delivered via the radio. So a level 1 situation awareness task. This relationship, as well as the one between conflict detection, which required pilots to predict if there was going to be a future conflict. The relationship between those 2 variables and our risk score were significant and in the predicted direction. So as participants performed better on those tasks, their risk score decreased, which was exciting. Oh no, hopefully my laptop doesn't die. Our relationship here between situation awareness others, which was to do with the type, call sign, and location of other aircrafts, was in the opposite direction as we predicted, but I'll talk about that in a second here. And then finally, the R squared for our overall model for the risk score was 0.54, which means that this model can explain 54% of the variance in our risk score, which was exciting. So as I said, the direction of the relationship between our SA others variable and our risk score variable was opposite to our hypothesis. So it showed that pilots who performed better on these tasks actually had higher risk scores. And a potential explanation that we thought of for this this curious result was that this relationship might represent a paradox with self-reporting critical incidents. So in order for a pilot to report that they've experienced an incident involving a situation awareness failure, the pilot has to be consciously aware that this failure has occurred. So a level of awareness is required to even report that you've been involved in certain incidents. And incidents, obviously, intuitively, some incidents require more awareness, whereas others require less awareness. So you don't have to be super aware to realize that you've been in an accident or you landed somewhere other than the runway, but other incidents do require higher levels of awareness. So basically what we predicted is that pilots with, or what we thought was that pilots with better awareness may report that they've been in more incidents and perform better on our situation awareness tasks. So following this logic, we suggest that individuals with superior awareness might perform better on our SA tasks and also report more critical incidents. And I did end up doing an ad hoc analysis with this hypothesis in mind. And I'm happy to talk about that as well. If you're interested at all, feel free to reach out and we can chat about it. So finally, the conclusions and implications. The main purpose of this study was to model the relationship between situation awareness and individual factors, as well as pilot history of real life critical flight incidents. And we see a need to develop more ecologically valid cognitive screening tools that identify pilots who may be at risk for poor safety outcomes. And we also see the need for future research in order to develop more sensitive and validated self-report measures in aviation. And these are important, especially useful for research situations where real life flight tests can't be used as an outcome measure. And our findings are applicable to the development of cognitive assessment tools in the aviation domain that may use situation awareness abilities as a main predictor of a pilot's safety. And virtual assessment tools that can accurately predict pilot risk really have the potential to meaningfully improve safety outcomes in aviation. So thanks again for coming and listening. Please reach out if you have any questions about the risk score or about awareness and self-reporting critical incidents or about anything that I've chatted about. Thank you, and I'm hoping to connect with some of you guys soon.